I remember the exact moment when everything changed, not the moment of triumph, but the moment of dismissal that lit the fire inside me. It was a Tuesday morning in March, and I was standing in the equipment shed of Morrison Farm, oil stains on my work boots and dirt under my fingernails from another 14-hour day. Mr. Peterson from the County Agricultural Committee had come to discuss the upcoming season's contracts. I'd been working at Morrison Farm for 3 years, learning every aspect of the operation, from soil preparation to harvest logistics. I knew those fields better than anyone, including old Morrison himself. But when I stepped forward to contribute to the conversation about crop rotation patterns, Peterson looked at me with that condescending smile I'd grown to hate. "Son, we're talking real farming here. Why don't you go check on the equipment or something?" Morrison didn't defend me. He just nodded toward the door, dismissing me like I was nothing more than hired muscle. That's when I realized that no matter how hard I worked, no matter how much I learned, I would always be seen as just a helper in their eyes. The worst part wasn't the dismissal itself, it was the laughter that followed as I walked away. They were discussing a major soybean contract, something that could set up any farmer for years. And they saw me as too insignificant to even listen to their conversation. That night, lying in my small rented room above the feed store, I made a decision that would change everything. If they wouldn't respect me as Morrison's helper, I'd earn their respect as their competition. The next morning, I didn't show up at Morrison Farm. Instead, I drove to the county courthouse to research land records. I'd saved every penny for 3 years, living on beans and rice, driving a truck held together by prayer and duct tape. My bank account showed $23,147. Not much by farming standards, but it was a start. I spent days poring over property records, looking for opportunities they'd overlooked. That's when I found it. The old Henderson place, 60 acres of prime farmland that had been tied up in estate proceedings for 2 years. The family wanted to sell quickly, and the asking price was reasonable because of the property's complicated legal history. Most farmers had avoided it due to the paperwork nightmare, but I had something they didn't: time and desperation. While they were busy managing their existing operations, I could dedicate every waking hour to untangling the legal mess. I called the estate attorney and scheduled a meeting. The Henderson family was scattered across 3 states, and none of them wanted to deal with farming. They just wanted the land sold and the inheritance distributed. The attorney, Mrs. Rodriguez, was initially skeptical when I walked into her office. I looked exactly like what I was, a young farmhand with calloused hands and worn clothes. But when I presented my research on the property's value, market conditions, and my financing plan, her expression changed. "You've done your homework," she admitted. "The family has been hoping for someone who actually understands agriculture." That meeting set everything in motion. Within a week, I had an agreement in principle to purchase the Henderson land for $485,000. It would take every dollar I had saved, plus a loan that would keep me awake at night for months. But it was my shot at independence. Walking into First National Bank felt like entering enemy territory. I'd rehearsed my presentation dozens of times, but my hands still shook as I waited in the loan officer's office. The walls were covered with photos of successful local businessmen, all middle-aged, all white, all looking nothing like me. Sarah Chen, the agricultural loan specialist, was younger than I'd expected and more thorough than I'd hoped. She examined every document with the intensity of a detective investigating a crime. My business plan was solid. I'd spent weeks researching soybean prices, input costs, and yield projections for the Henderson land. "Your numbers look good on paper," she said after an hour of review, "but you have no experience as an independent operator. 3 years as a farmhand doesn't qualify you for a loan this size." I'd prepared for this objection. From my folder, I pulled out yield records from Morrison Farm for the past 3 years. along with detailed notes on every field operation I'd supervised. I showed her photographs documenting my work, soil preparation, planting patterns, pest management decisions. I may have been paid as a helper, but I've been thinking and acting like a farm manager, I told her. These records prove I understand every aspect of the operation. The meeting lasted 3 hours. Chen grilled me on everything from crop insurance to equipment depreciation. But slowly, her skepticism gave way to professional respect. She could see I wasn't just another dreamer with unrealistic expectations. "I'll need additional collateral," she finally said. "And the interest rate will be higher due to your limited credit history, but I think we can work something out." Walking out of that bank, I felt like I could conquer the world. The loan wasn't guaranteed yet, but for the first time, someone in a position of authority had taken me seriously. I waited until Friday afternoon to submit my resignation at Morrison Farm. The old man was in his office, reviewing harvest reports from the previous season when I knocked on his door. "Morrison, I need to talk to you." He looked up with the irritated expression he wore whenever I interrupted his paperwork. "Make it quick, I've got work to do." "I'm giving you 2 weeks' notice. I'm buying my own place." The silence that followed was deafening. Morrison set down his papers and stared at me like I'd grown a second head. When he finally spoke, his voice carried a mixture of disbelief and contempt. "Your own place? Boy, you can't even afford a decent truck, and you think you can run a farm?" I placed a copy of my purchase agreement on his desk. His expression changed as he read the legal documents, realizing this wasn't some fantasy or joke. The Henderson place was well known in the county, prime farmland that every established farmer had coveted. "How the hell did you swing this?" he demanded. "Hard work and careful planning. Same way anyone builds something worthwhile." Morrison's face reddened. I could see him calculating what my departure would mean for his operation. Despite treating me like hired muscle, he knew exactly how much work I'd been doing. Finding a replacement wouldn't be easy. "You'll be bankrupt within 2 years," he predicted. "Farming isn't just about showing up and working hard. It takes experience, connections, and capital you don't have." "Maybe," I replied, "but at least I'll fail trying to build something of my own." Word of my land purchase spread through the farming community like wildfire. The reaction was predictably mixed. Some admired my ambition, others questioned my sanity, and a few seemed genuinely threatened by the competition. April brought the reality of independent farming. Every decision was mine alone. What to plant, when to plant it, how much fertilizer to apply, which suppliers to use. The weight of responsibility was both terrifying and exhilarating. I decided to plant the entire 60 acres in soybeans. The math was simple. Soybeans required less upfront investment than corn, had better drought tolerance, and the market outlook was strong. It was the safe play for a first-year operation running on borrowed money. My equipment situation was challenging. I couldn't afford new machinery, so I scoured farm auctions and classified ads for used implements. I found a 20-year-old planter that needed work, a cultivator with worn shares, and a sprayer that leaked more than it should. Everything required repairs, which I did myself in the evenings after working the fields. The local farm supply dealers were skeptical about extending credit to a newcomer. I had to pay cash for seed, fertilizer, and chemicals, a significant strain on my limited working capital. Every purchase was carefully calculated, with no room for waste or error. My neighbors watched with varying degrees of curiosity and amusement. Some offered genuine help and advice, while others seemed to be waiting for me to fail. The Peterson who had dismissed me at Morrison's farm made a point of driving by frequently, always with that same condescending smile. By late May, my soybeans were planted and looking good. The field was a beautiful sight, straight rows of dark soil with tiny green shoots emerging in perfect formation. It represented everything I'd worked for, everything I'd risked, but I knew the real test was still coming. Growing the crop was only half the battle. Marketing it profitably would determine whether I survived long enough for a second season. June brought challenges I hadn't fully anticipated. A late frost damaged about 10 acres of early planted soybeans, forcing me to replant at additional cost. Then came 3 weeks without rain, leaving my young plants stressed and stunted while established farmers with irrigation systems maintained their advantage. The equipment failures were constant. The old planter broke down twice during the planting season, and the sprayer's pump gave out during a critical herbicide application. Each repair meant lost time and unexpected expenses that strained my already tight budget. But the hardest part was the isolation. Working alone meant 12-hour days with no one to talk to, except the occasional neighbor who stopped by to offer unsolicited advice. Most of their suggestions carried the underlying message that I was in over my head. I developed a routine to stay sane and focused. Up at 5 a.m. for equipment checks and field scouting, work until dark, then spend evenings on paperwork, maintenance, and planning the next day's operations. I fell into bed exhausted every night, but somehow found the energy to do it again the next morning. The financial pressure was constant. Every decision involved calculating costs down to the penny. I couldn't afford to waste anything, not fuel, not time, not opportunity. While established farmers could absorb mistakes, I had no margin for error. Despite the challenges, my soybeans were performing better than expected. The late replanting actually worked in my favor, as those plants avoided some disease pressure that affected earlier plantings. By mid-July, even my skeptical neighbors had to admit my fields looked competitive. Peterson drove by one evening while I was adjusting my sprayer. He stopped his truck and called out, "Crops look decent for a rookie." It wasn't exactly high praise, but coming from him, it felt like a significant acknowledgement. August brought new lessons in farm management that no amount of working for someone else could have taught me. When you're responsible for every decision, every mistake becomes a teachable moment you can't afford to repeat. My biggest learning came from a seemingly minor problem. Soybean aphids appeared in the eastern section of my farm. At Morrison's, I would have simply reported the issue and waited for instructions. Now I had to decide whether to spray, what product to use, and how much to spend on the treatment. I spent hours researching economic thresholds, consulting with the county extension agent, and studying weather patterns. The decision to spray cost me $200 in chemical and application costs, but probably saved twice that in yield loss. The experience taught me that successful farming isn't just about growing crops. It's about making informed decisions under uncertainty, often with incomplete information and financial pressure. Every choice has consequences that ripple through the entire operation. I also learned the importance of relationships in agriculture. The dealers who had been skeptical about extending credit began to see me as a serious operator. When I paid my bills on time and demonstrated knowledge of their products, they started offering the same support they gave established customers. My breakthrough moment came during a county farm tour in late August. Agricultural professionals and farmers visited operations throughout the region to observe different management practices. I'd volunteered to host a stop at my farm, despite knowing I'd be compared to operations with decades of experience. The group walked my soybean fields, asking questions about variety selection, planting dates, and pest management. I answered honestly about my challenges and the solutions I'd developed. Several veterans nodded approvingly at my explanations. "For a first-year operation, this is impressive work," commented Dr. Williams from the University Extension Service. "You're asking the right questions and making sound decisions." That endorsement from a respected authority carried more weight than I'd expected. Word spread that the new farmer might actually know what he was doing. September arrived with the anticipation and anxiety that every farmer knows: harvest season. All the planning, planting, and managing of the past 6 months would soon be reduced to simple numbers: bushels per acre and price per bushel. I'd arranged to hire Morrison's custom harvester, despite the awkwardness of our relationship. He had the best equipment in the county, and I needed every advantage to maximize the quality and efficiency of my harvest. The cost would be significant, but losing crop to weather while waiting for cheaper alternatives wasn't worth the risk. Morrison showed up on a crisp October morning with his massive combine and grain cart. He was professional but distant, treating our interaction as purely business. I could see him evaluating my fields with the critical eye of someone hoping to prove his predictions correct. The first few passes through the field were tense. I followed the combine, watching the grain flow and calculating yields in my head. The numbers looked promising, but I wouldn't know the final results until the entire field was harvested. By noon, it was clear that my soybeans had exceeded expectations. Morrison's combine showed consistent yields of 52 bushels per acre, well above the county average and competitive with the best farms in the region. Even Morrison seemed surprised by the results. "Your beans are testing clean and dry," he admitted grudgingly. "Good protein content too. You did better than I expected." That afternoon, trucks lined up at my farm to haul soybeans to the elevator. Each load represented months of work and worry transformed into measurable success. The elevator receipts showed not just quantity, but quality premiums for moisture content and protein levels. When the final truck pulled away, I stood alone in my harvested field, looking at the golden stubble stretching to the horizon. The numbers were better than my most optimistic projections. For the first time since buying the farm, I allowed myself to believe I might actually make it. November brought the moment every farmer dreads and anticipates: deciding when to sell. I had 3,120 bushels of soybeans in storage at the local elevator, and the price was fluctuating daily based on export demand, weather in South America, and currency exchange rates. Most established farmers had the luxury of holding their grain for better prices, using their cash reserves to cover operating expenses while waiting for market opportunities. I didn't have that flexibility. My loan payments were due, and my bank account was running dangerously low. I spent hours studying market reports, trying to understand the forces that drove commodity prices. The learning curve was steep. Chicago Board of Trade futures, basis differentials, and export inspection reports became my daily reading material. The local elevator manager, Tom Walsh, became an unexpected mentor during this period. He'd watched hundreds of farmers navigate their first marketing decisions and recognized my situation. "Son, perfect timing is impossible," he told me during one of my daily price-checking visits. "The goal isn't to hit the absolute top. It's to make a profit and stay in business for next year." His advice proved crucial when soybean prices spiked in mid-November due to shipping delays in South America. The market jumped $0.40 per bushel in 2 days, and I faced the decision every farmer struggles with: sell now and guarantee a good profit, or wait for potentially higher prices. I sold half my crop at $12.80 per bushel, locking in enough revenue to cover all my expenses, plus a modest profit. The remaining grain I held for another month, eventually selling at $13.20 when export demand pushed prices higher. The final numbers were better than I dared hope. After all expenses, loan payments, and land costs, I'd cleared $28,000 in profit from my first season. It wasn't enough to get rich, but it was enough to prove I belonged in agriculture. More importantly, I'd learned that successful farming required skills beyond agronomy: market analysis, risk management, and strategic decision-making under pressure. December gave me time to reflect on the season and plan for year 2. The financial success of my first crop had earned grudging respect from the local farming community, but I knew one good year didn't guarantee anything. I used the winter months to analyze every aspect of my operation, looking for improvements and efficiencies. The equipment had performed adequately, but would need significant repairs or replacement soon. My storage capacity was limited, forcing me to market grain earlier than optimal. The farmstead needed improvements to support larger operations. Most importantly, I began researching opportunities to expand. The Henderson land had proven highly productive, but 60 acres weren't enough to generate the income needed for long-term sustainability. I needed to either buy or rent additional ground to achieve economies of scale. My reputation had improved enough that several neighbors approached me about renting their land. The Kowalski farm had 80 acres they wanted to retire from active farming, and the Walsh family had 120 acres they were considering leasing out. Expanding would require additional equipment and working capital, but the numbers looked promising. With 260 total acres, I could justify purchasing newer, more efficient machinery and negotiate better prices on inputs through volume discounts. I spent January preparing detailed budgets for different expansion scenarios. The bank that had been skeptical about my initial loan was now interested in financing growth based on my demonstrated success and professional approach to farm management. The key decision was whether to expand gradually or make a significant jump in scale. Conservative growth meant less risk, but also less opportunity to capitalize on the momentum I'd built. Aggressive expansion offered greater potential returns, but could destroy everything if market conditions turned unfavorable. By February, I decided to pursue moderate expansion, adding the Kowalski 80 acres and half of the Walsh ground. This would nearly triple my operation while maintaining manageable risk levels. Spring of my second year brought opportunities I couldn't have imagined 12 months earlier. The county agricultural committee that had dismissed me as just a helper invited me to participate in their crop planning meetings. My successful first season had earned me a seat at the table I'd been excluded from before. The irony wasn't lost on me when Peterson, the same man who had suggested I go check on the equipment, asked for my opinion on herbicide resistance management strategies. I provided thoughtful input without any trace of smugness, though I'll admit to enjoying the moment. More significant opportunities emerged as well. The Regional Soybean Growers Association asked me to speak at their winter conference about first-year farming challenges. Standing before 200 experienced farmers, sharing the lessons I'd learned through trial and error, felt like a validation of everything I'd worked to achieve. My expanded operation was performing well. The additional acreage allowed me to negotiate better prices on seed, fertilizer, and chemicals. More importantly, I'd been able to purchase used but reliable equipment that eliminated many of the breakdowns that had plagued my first season. The Kowalski and Walsh families had proven to be excellent landlords, offering advice while respecting my management decisions. Their confidence in leasing prime farmland to a relative newcomer spoke to the reputation I'd built through consistent performance and professional conduct. But the real breakthrough came in late spring when I received an unexpected phone call from Marcus Thompson, the regional purchasing manager for Consolidated Grain. His company was one of the largest agricultural processors in the Midwest, with contracts worth millions of dollars. "I've been hearing good things about your operation," Thompson said. "We're looking for reliable suppliers who can meet our quality specifications. Would you be interested in discussing a potential contract?" The call represented exactly the kind of opportunity I dreamed about when starting my own farm. Direct contracts with major buyers, bypassing local elevators, and capturing premium prices for quality production. The meeting with Consolidated Grain took place at their regional office, a modern facility that processed soybeans from farms across 5 states. Walking into that building, I felt the same nervousness I'd experienced during my first bank loan application, but with an underlying confidence born from proven success. Marcus Thompson was accompanied by two other executives, Sarah Mitchell, the Quality Assurance Director, and Robert Chen, the Procurement Analyst. They'd obviously done their homework on my operation, asking detailed questions about my production practices, storage capabilities, and expansion plans. Our company is shifting toward direct relationships with producers who can guarantee consistent quality and delivery, Thompson explained. We're willing to pay premiums for soybeans that meet specific protein and oil content parameters. The numbers they discussed were impressive, potentially $0.50 to $0. 75 per bushel above local elevator prices for beans meeting their specifications. On my projected 8,000 bushel harvest, that premium could add $4,000 to $6,000 to my annual revenue. But the contract came with requirements that would challenge my operation. I'd need to segregate qualifying soybeans from the rest of my crop, invest in testing equipment to verify quality parameters, and guarantee delivery schedules that required significant storage capacity. We're prepared to offer technical support and some financing assistance for necessary infrastructure improvements, Mitchell added. But we need assurance that you can scale up to meet our minimum volume requirements. The minimum contract was for 15,000 bushels annually, nearly double my current production capacity. Meeting that threshold would require leasing additional ground or achieving dramatic yield improvements on my existing acres. I asked for 2 weeks to analyze the proposal and develop a response. The opportunity was exactly what I'd hoped for, but it represented a significant escalation in both potential rewards and risks. That night, I spread financial projections across my kitchen table, modeling different scenarios for meeting consolidated grains requirements. The numbers showed clear profit potential, but also highlighted the capital investments needed to capture that opportunity. The consolidated grain contract represented a crossroads in my farming career. Accepting would require doubling my operation within 2 years, a leap that could either establish me as a major player or destroy everything I'd built. I spent those 2 weeks conducting the most thorough analysis of my career. I visited farms that had similar contracts with major processors, learning about both the benefits and challenges of direct marketing arrangements. The stories were mixed. Some farmers had thrived under contract production, while others had struggled with the rigid quality requirements and delivery schedules. The financial modeling showed that meeting Consolidated's minimum volume requirement would necessitate farming at least 300 acres of premium soybeans. I currently had access to 140 acres through owned and rented ground, meaning I needed to secure an additional 160 acres of suitable farmland. This was where my improved reputation in the farming community became crucial. Word of the potential contract had spread, and several landowners approached me about long-term rental agreements. The Morrison farm, ironically, had 200 acres they were considering leasing out as the old man contemplated retirement. The most challenging requirement was upgrading my storage and handling capabilities to maintain grain segregation. Consolidated's quality standards required separate storage for contract soybeans, along with testing and documentation protocols that would add complexity to my harvest and marketing operations. I met with my banker, Sarah Chen, to discuss financing options for the necessary expansion. Her attitude had changed dramatically since our first meeting. Instead of skepticism, she showed enthusiasm for supporting my growth plans. "Your track record speaks for itself," she said. "We're prepared to provide the capital you need to take advantage of this opportunity." After careful consideration, I decided to accept Consolidated's contract offer. The decision required signing rental agreements for an additional 180 acres and committing to a $75,000 investment in storage and handling equipment. It was the biggest risk I'd ever taken, but also the biggest opportunity. When I called Marcus Thompson to accept their offer, I could hear the satisfaction in his voice. "Welcome to the Consolidated Grain family," he said. "We're looking forward to a long and profitable relationship." The summer of my third farming season was a whirlwind of expansion and logistics coordination. Managing 320 acres required entirely different systems than the small operation I'd started with. Every aspect of my business had to scale up simultaneously: equipment capacity, labor management, input purchasing, and financial planning. The learning curve was steep and unforgiving. With triple the acreage, equipment breakdowns that had been minor inconveniences became major crises affecting hundreds of acres. I had to develop backup plans and redundancy in ways I'd never considered before. Hiring my first employee was another milestone I hadn't fully prepared for. Jake Martinez was a young farmer struggling to get started, much like I'd been 2 years earlier. Teaching him my systems while learning to delegate responsibility tested my management abilities in unexpected ways. The consolidated grain contract added complexity to every operation. Contract soybeans required different varieties, planting dates, and management practices than my other acres. Keeping everything organized and documented according to their specifications required attention to detail that pushed my organizational systems to their limits. But the most significant challenge was managing relationships with my various landlords. Each had different expectations, payment preferences, and levels of involvement in management decisions. Balancing their interests while maintaining operational efficiency required diplomatic skills I was still developing. The financial pressure was also more intense than I'd experienced. With larger loans, higher operating costs, and more complex cash flow requirements, every decision carried greater consequences. I found myself checking commodity prices multiple times daily and constantly recalculating profitability projections. Despite the challenges, the expanded operation was performing well. Yields were meeting or exceeding projections across all my farms, and the quality metrics for my contract soybeans were consistently hitting Consolidated's premium thresholds. By late summer, it was clear that my gamble on rapid expansion was paying off. The combination of increased volume and premium prices was generating revenue levels I'd barely dreamed of 2 years earlier. October brought the harvest that would define my future in agriculture. 3 years after being dismissed as just a helper, I was managing one of the most successful soybean operations in the county, with contracts that made me a player in regional agriculture markets. The numbers exceeded even my optimistic projections. Total production reached 18,400 bushels, with 15,200 bushels qualifying for Consolidated Grain's premium contract. The quality bonuses added $11,400 to my revenue, while the volume efficiency of the larger operation had reduced my per-acre costs significantly. More satisfying than the financial success was the recognition from my peers. The same agricultural committee that had once dismissed me now asked for my input on county farming initiatives. Peterson, who had doubted my abilities, nominated me for the regional Young Farmer of the Year award. The local farm publication featured my operation in a cover story about successful agricultural entrepreneurship. Standing in my soybean field for the photographer, holding a sample of the premium beans that had exceeded all quality specifications, I reflected on the journey that had brought me to this moment. Morrison stopped by during harvest to see my operation firsthand. The man who had predicted my bankruptcy within 2 years walked through fields that were clearly outperforming his own. His congratulations were genuine, if somewhat grudging. "I was wrong about you," he admitted. "You've built something impressive here." But perhaps the most meaningful recognition came from Jake, my young employee who reminded me so much of myself 3 years earlier. As we finished the last field of harvest, he asked about opportunities to rent his own ground and start farming independently. "You've shown me it's possible," he said. "If someone like you can make it work, maybe I can too." That conversation reminded me that success isn't just about personal achievement. It's about opening doors for others who face the same challenges and skepticism I'd encountered. As I locked up the equipment shed that evening, I looked across fields that stretched to the horizon under the setting sun. The stubble-covered ground would rest through winter, but come spring, it would once again be planted with crops that represented hope, determination, and the belief that hard work could overcome any obstacle. Thank you for listening to this story of determination, growth, and the sweet satisfaction of proving doubters wrong. From dismissed farm helper to major contract holder, this journey reminds us that success often comes to those who refuse to accept others' limitations. I'd love to hear from you in the comments below. What part of the world are you listening from? Have you ever had to prove yourself against the odds? Please share your thoughts and don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more inspiring stories of triumph over adversity. Until next time, remember that sometimes the best motivation comes from someone telling you that you can't do something. Thank you for joining me on this journey from the fields to success.